And Gene Seberg was chased by the paparazzi, which is in the movie, and that's something that Kristen has dealt with a lot. How did that personal experience factor into the movie?
I didn't have to fake it. You know, I know that feeling of sort of feeling stolen from. It's a thievery. It's funny too, because I think the impression that we got from Jean was that she maybe felt similarly. As long as things aren't sort of like distorted and skewed, no one's impression of you is necessarily wrong. You can't like fully try and control that in this like finite way. It's just that in our story, those details are wrong and they're lies, and that happens occasionally in a much more superficial way to like celebrities. You know, we're all kind of part of this weird comic book thing that's very fun and, you know, lucrative. You know, money drives so many strange narratives in this life, and like I think as long as that narrative feels true, I don't care, I don't mind. It's when it starts to feel like it falsely represents you, and you just feel completely out of control is when it becomes painful. And I've tasted that in a far less intense way. But I know that feeling of having to present and wanting to always sort of present your truth and have it feel impossible to do so. It's an awful feeling.
And you did talk about that a bit in the Harper's Bazaar article when you talked about being warned about how to behave in public with your girlfriend. Since that article came out, what sort of reactions have you gotten?
I mean, I know that's definitely, like, it's easy to pull that headline and make it, I mean, I'm really, honestly, the conversation has changed so drastically internally and externally on that subject in terms of people trying to preserve their careers and that's sort of success. I'm so lucky to be able to reap the benefits of a sort of new generation that really accepts the progress of that conversation and really like wears it very proudly. And it hasn't always been that way, and I think in the last couple of years it just is like so much easier. And so I was just sort of referencing the many conversations that were very typical of like, well, you know, there are ways to not make waves and there are ways to just sort of be generic and then like really digestible, and maybe you do that and maybe you work more. It's like, well, I mean, that's just been a conversation that's always existed, and I've always radically rejected it, and so it's just nice to be able to talk about that in a way that people really understand now, instead of sounding like I'm like being crazy and being like, don't put me in a box. It's like ambiguity is a cool thing. Now it's like, duh. Like before it was something I had to really kind of like say like it was this like far out idea, and now it's kind of more on the main stage, which is rad.
Do you feel like you've been offered different roles since coming out, or has it not affected anything?
I don't think so. Maybe I wouldn't know. I think, I wouldn't know. I think I didn't really like come out. It wasn't like, oh, I was not out. I was like, I'm so lucky. Like that wasn't like a traumatic, difficult sort of like mountain to climb. That I kind of lived really freely and saw this trickle down effect. Like other people were more affected by it than I was, and then I was like, oh, I really understand like the weight of this, and I'd love to be involved in that, whatever. But I hate like commodifying like details of my life, but at the same time, I'm a pretty open book.
It would be pretty cool if you heard from Marvel after that interview, saying, since you said...
I used them as sort of the, like, I could have said any other, It wasn't like a specific, it was literally just like, I kind of thought of like a big conglomerate type thing.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't, I'm sure that they would love to hire the gay kids to be super. I was really more about the internal conversation that was going on.
You've got an expert right here.
I in no way was projecting the ideas of Marvel and the way that they hire their cast members. In no way. It was more of a me conversation.
Sure. Anthony, what superhero should Kristen be?
That's a very good question.
A gay one.
Nice.